The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which people with limited competence in a particular domain overestimate their abilities.
So, because you don't get the donkey dick geometry argument, I'm wrong? Wow, talk about idiocy. This whole video shows nothing but ignorance and not getting the argument from yourself and Rachie. This shows why she and yourself think it's cherry-picked. Gosh, I swear it's like trying to talk to a wall sometimes. Simple. You don't have a tangent. You don't have geometric horizon. You don't have geometry. So no globe. I rest my case. Yes, you are Dunning-Kruger.
Whatever you need to tell yourself to make you feel superior to us mere mortals. By the way, I hear IMAX is looking to hire projectionists.
You do know that one characteristic of Dunning-Kruger is exactly what you are doing?
My actually arguing a topic with facts and citations from actual experts instead of opinion and BS? If that is Dunning-Kruger to you, then I embrace it wholeheartedly.
Keep telling yourself that.
Oh, no worries, I will. Welcome everyone. Those are just a few comments that Flatsoid posted on a post I made on my community tab. The Flatsoid comment in the community post was from my Black Swan video in response to him. I have made no bones about calling him out regarding his Dunning-Kruger. And of course, he thinks I have Dunning-Kruger as well. And that is what inspired this video. And of course, as most of you know, I do my research. To that end, I found an article that David Dunning had written for the British Psychological Society. This article is dated 7 March 2022 and falls under the category of Cognition and Perception, Personality and Self, titled The Dunning-Kruger Effect and Its Discontents. David Dunning responds to our March cover feature. The Dunning-Kruger effect suggests that unknowledgeable people lack the very expertise they need to recognize their lack of expertise. They thus overrate their knowledge and performance. Put more technically, deficient cognition, i.e. expertise, leads to faulty metacognition, i.e. self-evaluation of expertise. In contrast, highly expert people underrate their skills socially because they overestimate the knowledge level of their peers. Kruger and Dunning, 1999. The effect has been uncovered in many settings involving medical residents, gun owners, tournament chess players, debate teams, beginning aviators, and hospital lab techs. Dunning, 2011. In a 2021 study, people who were the least able to separate fake from real news demonstrated little awareness of their failures, but the most willingness to trust false news and spread it to others. Lyons et al., 2021. Recording Mom here. As we all well know, this includes sovereign citizens, First Amendment auditors, flat earthers, as well as others who are conspiracy-minded. In a recent Psychologist article, March issue, Robert D. McIntosh and Sergio Della Sala reviewed research arguing that the Dunning-Kruger effect has no real existence, but is a mere statistical artifact. They argued that the technical study double dips in its measure of expertise, in that the same task performance measure is used, A, to classify people into expert groups, and B, to benchmark the accuracy of self-appraisals of expertise. This opens the effect to the statistical artifact of regression to the mean. However, their discussion of the effect focuses on a slim sliver of work amid 20 years and more of active and varied research on the topic. For an aging review discussing possible statistical artifacts, see Dunning, 2011. They also oddly ignore scholarship that directly contradicts their assertions. For example, they cite the original statistical complaint about Dunning-Kruger, Kruger and Mueller, 2002, but not the response that immediately follows it in the same journal, Kruger and Dunning, 2002. In this limited space, let me present that contrary research. First, regarding double dipping, the authors fail to mention research that avoids it. Feld et al., 2017. Researchers asked economics students to estimate their performance on a course exam. However, they sorted students on their objective expertise separately, based on grade point average on previous courses. Although somewhat reduced, the Dunning-Kruger effect survived quite well. We have adopted Feld et al.'s SMART technique whenever we can in our ongoing research. Second, the authors failed to mention that we have examined regression to the mean effects directly across several studies. Erlinger et al. 2008, Kruger and Dunning 2002. The key test is to see whether the effect survives when noise, or measurement unreliability, is reduced or eliminated. The effect remains quite robust even after we do so. Third, the authors failed to mention research that reveals that something more than statistical artifact is going on and affirms the original metacognitive account for the effect. Jensen et al. 2021 asked respondents in 2 separate studies that each involved 3,500 respondents to gauge their performance on logic or grammar quizzes. They then carefully asked which computational model, based on item response theory, best anticipated the pattern of misjudgment seen among poor and top performers. The model that worked best included the assumption that poor performers were more prone to judge the accuracy of their answers poorly, as anticipated by our theoretical 1999 framework. Similarly, Engeler and Haubel found that people who were worse than average but thought themselves as better than average tended to commit the error of overestimating their performance. Their error was about the self. In contrast, those who performed better than average but thought themselves as worse tended to overestimate others. That is, their predominant error was one of social perception. These findings are consistent with our original theoretical framework and subsequent statistical investigations, Erlinger et al. 2008. Fourth, the authors conflate the idea behind the Dunning-Kruger effect with its concrete measurement, as though research on the effect stopped after study 2 of our original 1999 paper. There are many other ways to assess whether low performers lack insight into their deficits that avoid regression artifacts. In a class of 95 medical students learning cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, 36 failed, but only 3 recognized that failure before seeing a video of their performance, and only 17 after. Vanuk et al. 2006. In a national survey asking 1,300 Americans their opinions about vaccinations, roughly a third implausibly claimed to be as knowledgeable about the causes of autism as doctors and scientists. In reality, this overconfident group, who affirmed many myths about autism, demonstrated the least amount of knowledge. Moda et al. 2018. I apologize for the selectivity in this review. Science communication should humbly nod to when the situation is complicated, and there are some fascinating twists and turns in the story of the Dunning-Kruger effect outlined by over 2 decades of research that I hope would be a good read. I have also avoided a long-winded critique of the research featured in the original Psychologist article. For example, Neufer et al. 2017 may have asked people for nuanced and granular self-assessments, but then they lumped participants into crude categories, e.g., people more or less than 20 points overconfident, that obscured much of the information contained in these fine-grained measures and which limited what they could find. And again, there is other on-point research that tells a different story. We have used similar fine-grained self-assessments and replicated the original Dunning-Kruger effect. In one study, we asked participants financial questions like, if you invested £100 in a bond with a 5% annual interest rate, compounded every year, how much money would you have after 20 years? We asked participants to guess the chance that each of their answers were right. In the example above, the correct answer is £265, which surprises some people, usually because they are not aware of the power of compound interest. Instead, they have a different theory in mind in which money grows along a rigid straight line, and so think the answer is £200. They are quite confident in their answers because they apply a systematic misbelief to their reasoning. Others without such a strong theory are more aware that they do not know. Thus, the Dunning-Kruger effect is most pronounced when people harbor systematic misconceptions about a task. Williams et al. 2013. And of course, such a psychological circumstance would not matter if the Dunning-Kruger effect were a mere statistical artifact. But one last thought. Often scholars cite statistical artifacts to argue that the Dunning-Kruger effect is not real. But they fail to notice that the pattern of self-misjudgments remains regardless of what may be producing it. Thus, the effect is still real. The quarrel is merely over what produces it. Are self-misjudgments due to psychological circumstances, such as metacognitive deficits among the unknowledgeable? Or are they due to statistical principles revealing self-judgment to be a noisy, unreliable, and messy business? Either way, there are potential consequences. Among over 1,100 medical students in an obstetrics gynecological rotation, those receiving a grade of D+ or lower on their final exam thought on average they would get a much higher B-. Those getting an A only slightly underestimated their grade as a B+. Edwards et al. 2003. No matter how these patterns of mistaken self-perception arise, I'd be interested in how they play out as students move on to their medical practice. David Dunning, University of Michigan. Illustration, Tim Sanders. And here we have the references that David Dunning used for this article. It's important to note that all of us can have a bit of the Dunning-Kruger effect from time to time. However, most of us are self-aware enough to know when we are wrong about something, research what we were wrong about, and make corrections accordingly. Some lack any self-awareness and continue on as if they are right, no matter what. These people have permanent residence on Mount Stupid. Please remember to do all the YouTube-y stuff like, share, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell and click all to get notified when I upload new content. Thank you for watching. You are all awesome. See you in the next video.